be taking a hike to an arch called the Red Arch. On the way, we're going to pass by Jeep Arch and talk about arch formation in general. My team measures the ambient vibration of natural arches as a means of structural health monitoring. Joining us today is Riley Finnegan. She's a PhD student in geophysics at the University of Utah. Riley measures the ambient vibration of arches and towers as part of her PhD work. Today she's going to be setting out 2 seismometers. On the Red Arch, we're going to leave them overnight, capture how the arch vibrates through the day and through the night, come back, collect them in the morning. We're here at Jeep Arch, also known as Gold Bar Arch, and I brought you here because I thought it would be a good place to talk about arch formation. Arches are natural sculptures, they're erosional sculptures. They form through erosion, and when I look at Jeep Arch here, one of the things that I immediately look for is the point of initial undermining, the point where the arch initially formed. And you can see that there's probably one of these paleosol layers or a weak layer where there's more mud than sandstone running through the base of the arch. And to me, that looks like a likely place where the arch might have initially formed. From there, you start with this nascent arch, which is kind of just a hole in the fin, maybe a small thing. And then from there, it grows and grows and grows. The opening grows upwards as blocks collapse in. The opening will grow downward as well as some of the weaker material erodes away. So you have this, a life cycle to these arches. They're born, they grow, and then in case of Jeep Arch here, you can see that ultimately it's going to run out of space. It'll grow and grow and grow until there's no more fin to grow in, and it'll collapse, and that'll be the end of the arch. So it's really fun to think about, where it might be in 1,000 years, in 100 years, where it was 1,000 or 100 years ago, and then our chance intersection in this moment to stand here and view some of these forms at really the pinnacle of their sculpture. So if we recognize that arches are erosional sculptures that have been evolving over tens of thousands of years, we have the ability to place their evolution through geologic time. But what also that really highlights for me is how sudden the rise of humans must be for an arch. For tens of thousands of years, this arch has been, trying to come to a balance with its environment, to the rainfall it gets, to the freezing it gets. Then all of a sudden, humans arrive. And all of a sudden, there's all this additional energy happening around the arch. We are on a different kind of timescale from the Earth. And so for us, this moment might not seem extreme, but for the arch, evolving over 10,000 years, all of a sudden there's humans. There's humans, walking on arches, jumping on arches. There's all of a sudden, a highway cut through here and a train passing over here. And that amounts to a really sudden change. But I think it takes a bit of a moment of reflection of geological time to appreciate how sudden that change is. This year, I've been serving as the Newell Fellow, the Jack Newell Fellow administered through the Honors College, which is a grant for faculty, a fellowship for faculty at the U, honoring the legacy of Professor Jack Newell, who dedicated 50 years of his career to multidisciplinary education, especially encouraging education across arts and sciences and humanities. So, I think this year I've tried to take that mission to heart. I worked over the last couple months to create a 4-part sound piece that contains vibration measurements from 4 different formations across the Four Corners region, which I think represent 4 distinct regions and 4 distinct issues and concerns and highlighting this region. The measurements we make here are useful from our scientific study, and I'm also trying to explore use of them for, an artistic sense, which is something new for me and something that the Newell Fellowship has sort of allowed me to muster a small bit of bravery to explore this new path. We're here at Bread Arch, and I'm super excited to be here. I love this arch. It's a beautiful arch. It's actually quite bigger than I thought it was going to be. It's got a span of a little over 100 feet, just separated on the side of the cliff, just hiding from view. Just this hidden treasure to find out here. We're rewarded with our hike by finding this hidden treasure just hanging on the side of the cliff here. And that's one of the reasons why I really love this arch. My team measures the ambient vibration of natural arches. Everything around me is constantly vibrating. For example, the wind today is really plucking this arch like a string. It's vibrating strongly, but we can't see it. We can't feel it, we can't see it, but it's constantly happening all around us. And arches, these slender rock features, happen to be really strong resonators that vibrate with a set of resonant modes. Like a guitar string would bend back and forth in different modes. That together, then that forms the sound you hear from a guitar string. Well, arches are doing the same. They're constantly vibrating at this predictable set of resonant modes. Now, we measure ambient vibration of these arches. That means just the vibration stimulated by the wind or seismic energy from the earth. And we look to then understand or measure those resonant modes, specifically the resonant frequencies of an arch. And we do this really for this concept of structural health monitoring. The idea is that the resonant properties of a freestanding structure like this arch are a function of the geometry and material properties. And the material properties are really twofold: stiffness and mass. Therefore, if you can measure the resonant frequencies reliably and with precision, you have established a way of monitoring changes in structural health over time, changes in mechanical composition of this resonating system over time. The good news is that it's relatively easy to measure the resonant modes of an arch. We, set a seismometer on the arch and we leave it there for about an hour. Come back, pick it up. The data are just ambient vibration, so in the time series, we're not looking for much. What we're looking is the spectral content, the frequency content of that ambient vibration record. So this particular arch here, Bread Arch, has a first resonant mode of 4.3 hertz, and that's the arch kind of going like this. It has a second resonant mode, it's about 5.1 hertz, and that's the arch actually going like this. It has a third resonant mode where there's what we call a node point, a stationary point more in the center of the arch, and it's kind of doing a bit of a snake dance at this mode.
This is a type of seismometer. It's called a nodal geophone, and it's able to measure the vibrations. So everything around us is always vibrating. There's energy that's coming from within the earth. There's energy from on top of the earth, like wind going by, and it's causing everything around us to shake. Those vibrations are really hard to detect as humans. They're really, really small, but we have some instruments that are able to do that for us. And so we just simply place the seismometer on top of the arch, and it's able to record the vibrations. So this specifically is able to record up-down motion, forward-backward motion, and left-right motion. And so we get from this instrument, it looks like a little squiggly waveform, and we're able to use some mathematical tools to break that down, and it tells us that, as we've learned, that the arch vibrates up and down at about 4 hertz, and it vibrates a little bit like this at 5 hertz, and then there's some higher frequency modes that are kind of like a S-shaped. These seismometers are traditionally used by seismologists to measure the ground vibrations. It can tell us about earthquakes. When an earthquake happens, it can tell us about the structure beneath the earth. But we really like to use this instrument because it's quite sophisticated and it's non-invasive. So we just set it on the arch, and we don't have to cause any damage to the arch while we're studying it.
So we are able to measure the resonant modes of arches and towers alike from ambient seismic data. And this, to be clear, is a completely non-destructive, non-invasive approach. We set the seismometer on, when we're done we pick it up, and there's no permanent anchoring, no disturbance to the arch itself. Then we can come back at any time and measure them again and see if there's any change in resonant frequency. If there's a shift, then it'll tell us that something has changed mechanically in the vibrating system. For example, if the arch develops cracks within the lintel here, the span, then it would get softer. And if it gets softer with this cracking, then the resonant frequencies will drop. This concept forms the foundation of what we call structural health monitoring. Structural health monitoring is a discipline now well developed in civil and structural engineering, based on exactly what we're doing here. Repeat measurements of resonant frequencies over time.
Part of our motivation for why we want to measure the vibrations of the arches is that we look at how energy from man-made sources affect arches. And so a lot of the work I've done has looked at how helicopters and the inaudible or subaudible sound emitted from helicopters, how that can cause arches to vibrate more than they typically do. And we're also looking at trains, and so we felt the vibrations of a train go by, and we know that Corona Arch down the road vibrates 10 times more than it usually does as the train goes by. And so that might not be a big amount of vibration that causes immediate damage, but we want to know over 10 years, over 50 years, what does a train passing by do to the integrity of the arch.
So the concept of structural health monitoring applied to natural arches really serves two complementary purposes. The first is trying to keep visitors to these landscapes safe in the event of arch collapses. Now, over about a mile away in Arches National Park, a million plus people come from all over the world to view these arches, and there have been some notable collapses in the past decades. For example, part of Landscape Arch collapsed in 1993. Wall Arch collapsed entirely in 2008, and the trail in this Devil's Garden loop used to run directly underneath Wall Arch. Arch collapses occur, and I think there's a recognition that if there's going to be any scientific approach to monitoring these arches for visitor safety, it needs to be this kind of non-invasive, non-destructive approach. But the flip side of that, why we do this kind of measurement, is keeping the arches safe from people. People out here, tourists, visitors, hobbyists alike, do one of everything, it seems, in this landscape, from driving cars to high lines, climbing, hiking, all manner of tours. And some of those activities have the potential to be damaging to natural arches. So I think around this idea of protection, conservation of these really unique and important natural landscapes is, number one, the recognition that human impacts are felt, even in these remote areas where you might not think that. And then addressing some of these difficult questions about what these human activities do. What's the impact of this rapid rise of human energy? And how can we put data on that to help understand that question? We sort of stumbled by chance on this technique of taking our ambient vibration measurements and speeding them up so that the resonant frequencies, which create a kind of vibrational fingerprint for the arch, can be heard as a sound print almost, which in turn makes a voice unique to every arch. And understanding that, the hum consists of these resonant frequencies translated into the realm of human hearing. So, for example, again, Barrett arch vibrates at the first two resonant frequencies of 4.3 and 5.1 hertz. These are far below the range of human hearing. If it was producing a sound, you couldn't hear it. But that doesn't mean it's not vibrating. That just means that human senses aren't equipped for that range. If we speed this arch, or speed up the ambient vibration data, then we can translate those two frequency peaks, the dominant frequency peaks, into the range where we can hear them. Speed it up 100 times, they become 430 hertz, 510 hertz. Those two frequencies are basically very close to an A note and a C note. And when you speed it up, now it comes into our range of perception. And this hum or this voice of the arch becomes something that we can hear. It's a lot of fun because every arch has its own sound print, its own vibrational fingerprint, and thus its own voice. Everyone is different. And we really then have the ability to hear this voice of the earth that we've never heard before. If we liken this to a voice, if we recognize this as a kind of voice of the earth that we haven't heard before, it really invites a moment to listen, and to listen to what the arch has to tell us, what the arch is feeling, how the arch is changing. The arch is in a way just constantly humming its state of health, constantly humming out. And we're just not able to hear it. So we have this technology that allows us to now experience this voice. Certainly arches are important to other cultures as well. Native American tribes in this region, historically in this region, include the Zuni, Ute, Paiute, and the Hopi. To these groups, they are sentient features. I worked in the past at Rainbow Bridge. Rainbow Bridge, if you don't know, is managed by the National Park Service, but there's a Native American Consultation Committee which consists of a number of tribes from the Four Corners region to whom Rainbow Bridge is a sacred feature. And these tribes come together to help manage the bridge in their traditional way. And they work with the Park Service. And so the tribes had posed a question to the Park Service. The Park Service contracted with me to address that question. As part of that work, we went to Rainbow Bridge and we measured the ambient vibration like we do. And we, again, translated that vibration to sound. And I had shared that with one of the park archaeologists. And she had the wherewithal to realize that this might be something also to play for the Native American Consultation Committee. And so we were, in this meeting room where I was basically reporting on our technical study. And so she played it through the speakers, and it's this big rumbling low tone. Rainbow Bridge has this beautiful set of tones that combine together really well. And she played it through the speakers in this conference room. It was about a minute, and it was a quiet moment. And I felt, proud that this was being heard in this moment. After that, one of the members of the Native American Consultation Committee spoke up, and he, without saying his words, he expressed to the group how it was an emotional moment for him to have heard that sound, that, this is a sacred feature to him and to the members of the tribes in that organization. And it was an emotional moment. And then he immediately after said, but I'm also frustrated in this moment. I'm frustrated that this is something we've been telling you all along, and you only believed it when the white scientists came and played it for you. This moment really stuck with me, of course. I mean, it showed me, number one, I was very naive coming into this. There was so much that I didn't know about Native cultures, Native perception of these arches, especially also Rainbow Bridge. So it showed me how much I have to learn. It also showed me that the sounds that we generate are not trivialities. They are things to be treated respectfully. I think looking to the future, one of the things I suspect might be the next boom commodity could be wilderness. I think, wilderness is growing increasingly rare, and that's truly wild spaces. I think that's a commodity that's going to be increasingly sought after in our, more connected, more digital, more discovered world. Even if we take a purely cynical view and just view wilderness as a commodity, then it certainly bears protection. Of course, we know it's worth far more than its monetary value. It's in many ways, essential for our human spirit to have these wild places where we can go and explore. So I think a lot of, our measurements really support this. They support this intersection of visitation and conservation. And again, I also think that this, reflects Native views. Working with the tribes in the past, especially at Rainbow Bridge, conservation is foremost. And I think there's a powerful parallel there in our goals. Our goals for these, sacred, iconic, revered landscapes is ultimately conservation.